Yeah, so what have you been thinking about since the last 7 days?
What I'm going to have for dinner, mainly.
Sorry?
What I'm going to have for dinner, mainly.
Okay. And what was the outcome?
Couldn't decide. Just got into an argument with myself and went hungry. No, nothing too dramatic. Nothing too dramatic. I mean, I've been studying, or sort of, it's more of a contemplation on the Passion, which has been an interesting exercise, but one that has me ricocheting all around the place. But anyway.
Tell me about it. Oh.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, you know, in the sense that when you contemplate the crucifixion from, well, this is me anyway, from the perspective of humanity, it just, well, took me in a big spiral down about the hopelessness of being human and judgment, you know, judging others and being critical and feeling quite hopeless. You look at it from the perspective of divinity, it's quite different in the sense it's you know, grace beyond comprehension and, you know, the divine solution to the human problem and those aspects. And then I suppose the third perspective is just to try and use your imagination and put yourself either at the scene or on the cross and try and imagine what that would be like. Yeah, so it was sort of very challenging, just taking myself through the different contexts and perspectives.
Yeah, yeah.
If you were to ask me why, which I'm sure you would.
Why?
I think it's, well, as with any contemplation, I guess it's an inquiry into, an open inquiry into perspectives and points of view and looking at what feelings are present and what emotions are rising and different sensations in the body, stuff like that, I guess. So probably doesn't answer the question why, probably, but that's,
yeah. Why? Not why, but by contemplating or putting yourself in Christ's position and get those various feelings, and what does that say to you? What is it?
Well, it said quite a lot, actually, in many respects. I mean, you know, just going through the different eyewitness accounts, you know, through the different Gospels. And just sort of, I suppose, some realizations that, you know, that he still had the presence of mind, even whilst going through the most horrific of circumstances. For example, to turn to the guy hanging next to him and give him hope, for example.
Yeah.
So that I found quite profound and moving, of course. Also sort of took me on a bit of an exploration about emotional responses and divinities. Like, for example, one of the questions I asked myself is like, you know, well, so I wonder how God the Father felt watching his son being hung on that cross, which then led me to a whole series of questions to myself around, or questions that arose around, like, would God have felt disappointment, and I'm making an assumption that God can have an emotional response because we're told that we're made in his image. So presumably emotions that we feel are things that he can have an awareness of. Doesn't mean that he would react like we would react. But I think he could still feel disappointed or probably even angry, perhaps. But that doesn't necessarily, as I said, lead to the view that anger leads, as it does for humans, leads to, an emotional response necessarily. But I can't see any reason in my mind, anyway, my reasoning as to why divinity can't have emotional response. I mean, after all, in one sense, isn't that what love is?
An interesting question.
I mean, it's much more than just an emotional response, obviously, but so it's been an interesting inward inquiry.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And the thing is, is when I start at these sort of inquiries, it's like, oh yeah, this should be pretty straightforward. And of course, it never is. But anyway, so what's been on your mind?
Yeah, but what's been on my mind, sort of links in with what you have just been saying from a different perspective, that's all. And I've still been thinking, what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. And it certainly links in, let's say, with what you're contemplating, Jesus's experience on the cross. And you and I have spoken about for years now, using different terminology, that we are in a bubble, okay? So we're in a bubble. Our mind, body, thinking, emotions are not us, not who we are, okay? And so you put what you've just experienced this past week with Jesus on the cross, that he, in your mind, is part of the bubble, okay? Part of the unreality. Because who are we? We're not our bodies. And as part of my thinking, we're not our history, okay? I was looking back at the Atlantean society and the pyramids and the pharaohs and those sort of things. And the reason doing that was obviously for get set up classes. And but made me realize that the entire universe, all the universes, all the dimensions within those universes, okay, are not real. Okay. They're all part of the bubble. Okay. And God, well, who is God? Okay. We certainly could say we are God as individuals. Okay. And we just experiencing a holographic type of experience here, because we are part of God and sort of 100% part of God. So everything that we look back on or we think about and we contemplate, okay, is part of that bubble, part of that holographic experience. Okay. So knowing that, why do we do what we do in the name of spirituality? I don't have an answer for that, because we're in the bubble, we're in the holographic. We have to, by the very nature of our incarnation into this experience, we've got to go and do our work, whatever it is. But we don't have to go because we know who we are. So we don't have to go searching for who we are. So that's where I am with my thinking this week, which was generated largely by having to do a Get Set Up class coming up at the end of the week. And
so what's the implication of that conclusion for you then?
Well, it's for me, it's actually quite profound, Don. Excuse me. I always have seen, historical events on planet Earth as our history. I've never seen it as, hey, that's me. That's me here and now. Okay? And that's the profound conclusion I came to. Yeah, it's and having established clearly that we spoke last week about the I am, okay, and you stopped there. I thought of another I am what I am. I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it was perhaps a song or something in the 60s, or whether it was some spiritual being that said that.
I think there's a passage in Isaiah, I think, the Old Testament.
Yeah.
As part of the Moses story, he's sort of pleading with God, well, tell me who you are so I can tell the people.
Yeah.
And I think he's stretching my memory, but I think he says, I am what I am.
Okay, that could well be where it comes from. Talking about the Bible in this context as well. Peter and Jesus sort of often had conversations that are reflected in the writing, and Peter, and I mentioned this last week. He asked Jesus, where is God, or something like that, and that was last week. What came to my mind this week was Peter said something to the effect of, hell, friend, you've got a hell of a blood heritage, okay? going from this person to this person to this person to Abraham, you know. And I can imagine just how Jesus looked at him and said to him, Abraham, before Abraham, I am. And he said something to that effect. Okay. And that really talks about what I have been thinking about this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good context.
Yeah. It's so not difficult, okay, but it's profound, okay. It's really profound to think that you know, before the earth was manifested, I am. Okay. And as the galaxies manifested, I am.
It's quite a an energizing, sort of almost joyful, you know, response, isn't it? In many respects.
It is, because somehow you just sort of sense yourself just so much bigger than the bubble and the universe and everything that go and you know, and then of course your mind comes in and you know, you're sort of like patting yourself on the back, which is the last thing you
well, and that's true. I mean, I can't recall who said it, but it's one of those things that sort of sticks with me. But I remember either reading or hearing, you know, words to the effect that you know, who you are cannot be contained, you know, with what's happening to you now, which is exactly the sort of point that you make, isn't it? You know?
Absolutely, yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So before Jesus, I am.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Never ceases to amaze me how you and I often are thinking the same things, completely different contexts, but each week it's just.
It doesn't amaze me anymore.
No, I suppose not. But anyway, well, it doesn't, but it does. You know. Yeah.
I have a similar experience with Sue, not on this sort of level of conversation, but just she would be walking up the passage, come to tell me something, and I'm walking down the passage and thinking the same thing. Okay, and it like happens on a daily basis. It's not like occasionally. So yeah. So
it's a wonderful connection. Yeah.
Well, we are one. You and I, and Sue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the rest that comes with you know, as you contemplate the dimensions of I am is it's just how entangled we can get in our perceptions of the day to day, isn't it? You know, and
that's it. Absolutely. And what entangles us? Our mind, our thinking, our emotions. Okay. And it's so marvelous to think that that's not us. Yes, we use it. Okay, and we've got to use it as a tool constructively, with all the things that the New Testament teaches us. Okay, while we're within this bubble, behave yourself. Okay, and here's the way to behave yourself.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely, and I think you know, just the advice around I mean, there's so many dimensions, but the advice around, there's consequences for the decisions that you make, like, and some people would call that karma or whatever, but, but yeah, you make good decisions and, flow might happen, but not necessarily, but, because, I mean, if you even think about, the context of the time, for example, that Jesus lived, walked the earth. I mean, his view, and those who followed him, was definitely the minority view. It wasn't going with the flow.
It was.
So it doesn't mean, good decisions means, easy life,
Yeah.
because in some respects, it could show up as a very difficult life. But again, if you have that level of awareness, that what the bubble actually is,
Yeah.
then you're just not participating in it.
Yeah. Yeah. The Romans initially at the beginning of it were good guys, okay, as were the Jews. The Jewish population originally, I think, were the Essenes, and they were very they were really what we would term good people, okay. As a nation, okay, they were they were very religious, and that's where the Jewish religion came from. Okay, was from that nation. Yeah. So there've been teachers on all sides of the manifestation of Earth, all times.
I guess it raises an interesting question, doesn't it? In the sense that, when that awareness comes to you, then what? What does that mean? Like, so if you look at Zen, it sort of says, become enlightened. What next? Well, wash the dishes and make the tea.
Yes, that's exactly what you've got to do. Okay, that's what's next. What's next is what's next. Okay, in the bubble. Okay, and yes, you just got to go about it. But when you start using that aha moment or that connection to better yourself materially, or positionally in society, okay, you are blocking the door for raising your consciousness back to the universal one. Yeah.
So I think in one sense, like conversations like this, I think are, well, they're not only rare, but I think they're very important in the sense that if someone is ready to hear a conversation like this, then I think there is benefit in hearing it, but that's different than going out and trying to, I don't know if it's the right word, but maybe evangelize people or,
Yeah. I agree with that. And or even, as an individual going to go and join a church. Why am I going to join the church? What's my motive? Okay. And I can maybe come up with a whole lot of motives. Okay. But are they lies? Are they motives that are coming from my brain, from my thinking?
No, well, we can be very creative around reasons and justification, can't we? So
yeah. So we then playing the game, and limiting ourselves from raising our consciousness.
No, it is profound, for sure.
Yeah, I was speaking to a friend in South Africa, and he quoted somebody, I can't remember, but I don't know if it was a geophysicist or anything like it, and he was saying that outside of this universe, okay, absolutely nothing physical. Okay, it's all energy. Everything is energy. So I don't know what perspective that person was talking about, but it's still an interesting concept, because we've manifested this physical universe. Okay, and now we go through experiences like making cups of tea and tending to the garden, and but elsewhere, as you move, everything is energy. So your experiences, I suppose, like your dreams, okay, really real. Experiences are real, okay, but they're not physical. So maybe that's something else, that a bubble that we've got to get into and out of.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like, because as a child, like if you have a nightmare or whatever, your mum or your dad says, "Oh, don't worry, it wasn't real,"
Yeah.
But it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you and I'm sure we've woken up at times and thinking, oh man, that was a shit dream.
Or it's usually, you find yourself just getting to the interesting bit and all of a sudden the alarm goes off or something.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Perhaps it's a good place to cut again.
Well, maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. I think we've said lots of things that have been said, and maybe there's no point trying to add to it.
Lingering on, because we shared what we've experienced this week, past week, and in the week now we go back to our work. You go back to your hardware store, and I go back to my get set up and
go and wash the dishes.
Go wash the dishes, yes.
Very good.
What T-shirt have you got on there? I can't see it. Some writing on it, but I can't see it.
Oh yeah, it's my misspent youth. It's a Metallica T-shirt. So,
okay.
But I'm not wearing it because of that. I'm wearing it because it's comfortable.
Yes. What's the weather becoming like on that side of the continent?
Starting to cool down a little bit in the morning. I mean, I still go out for a morning walk with Bella, and we're normally out there at the latest by like 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So it's still dark, like not even first light at that time now. But this morning, I think it was around about 15 degrees, so it's starting to, slowly go.
10 now at 5 a.m.
But I think you've had a bit of a cold spell over that time.
Yeah, well, certainly a pleasurable cold spell. Today it's heated up again. It's in the top 20s during the day. But it's been about 21, 22, and then down to 10 at night time. Well, when you wake up, the lowest is always just before sunrise, So yeah, so it's what I call pleasurable weather. Okay, I don't go for a walk at 5 or you know,
No,
bad dogs and Englishmen do that. You know.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's still a bit showery over here because it's been such a wet few months, you know, so which is sort of unusual. But normally when we come in, you know, like to the what I call the between seasons, it's usually my favourite time of year because of the cool nights and, you know, still warm days and that. But yeah, the weather patterns are different though, that's for sure.
Yeah, myself likewise. We've had a few drizzles now, which is such a pleasure because we haven't had rain for 6 months.
Yeah.
So now we're getting drizzles, which is absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Well,
very good. As always, good talking to you. So I look forward to catching up next week.
Yeah, great stuff.
Wonderful.
Cheers,
See you
man.
now. Bye.
Bye.